Hi, this is Sue for Parkies and Me, My Journey with Parkinson's. Today I thought I'd talk about some travel tips from our recent trip to Queenstown. On Monday, the 5th of May, my husband and I flew to Queenstown. Now, we had booked this flight quite some time ago, in October of last year, but had to postpone it due to my issues with my back. So the first thing that happened was we had chosen to travel to the airport with a service called Driving Miss Daisy. Now, Driving Miss Daisy is a sort of taxi affair, but they do seem to specialise in transporting older people and people with disabilities. Unlike most taxis, they will get out of the car, they will make sure that you're safely into the vehicle, help you with groceries or bags or whatever you have with you, and just provide a more attentive and, what's the word I'm looking for, insightful support for somebody that's walking with a stick or with the aid of a walking aid. So Driving Miss Daisy picked us up and helped with the bags and ensured that I was seated and belted up, as was my husband, before we proceeded. The other thing that's good about Driving Miss Daisy, there's a thing called a total mobility card that you can get here in New Zealand, and it's an excellent thing to have if you can't drive yourself everywhere and need to use some kind of paid service. The total mobility card provides you with 75%, yes, that's 75% off the cost of your journey. So it was well worth using, and so we used it both here in Christchurch and in Queenstown when we arrived. There are usually some providers in every centre that you go to, so that's the first thing. Look into whether you can get a total mobility card. You should be eligible if you've got Parkinson's or any other condition that means that mobilising needs to be supported by some kind of aid, and people need to be aware that you need support. So that's the first thing that I'd recommend, is look into getting a total mobility card. And you don't just have to use it for going to doctors or appointments. You can use it to socialise, you can use it for anything. The aim is to break down isolation and to enable people to get out into the community. So they dropped us off at the airport, and we had booked our journey to Queenstown in October last year. That was when we were supposed to go, but because I have had some issues with my mobility, brought on by a significant pain in my legs, we decided in October that it was going to be too difficult for us to go to Queenstown, and so we postponed it till this trip that we've just finished in May of this year. So we postponed it and went on the 5th of May. So when we had booked initially, we had obviously put an alert on our file with Air New Zealand that I was going to need assistance to get on and off the plane. So they called my name when we were sitting waiting to board, and they said, "We understand that you need a wheelchair to get on board." And then we advised them that actually no, that was true at the time of the initial booking, but that I had improved to the point where I just needed a stick and didn't need the wheelchair. And then they offered if there was anything else that they could do for us. So we turned to them and said, "Is there such a thing as priority boarding?" And they said yes. They said, "Would you like us to give you priority boarding?" And we said, actually, that would be really helpful. So priority boarding is simply that anybody with mobility issues, such as myself and the person that's travelling with them, can go on board the aircraft first, so you don't have to worry about people behind you stacking up because you're slow, feeling pressured and possibly causing some anxiety when you're trying to get your baggage up in the overhead lockers, and just generally getting yourself sorted to get in your seat ready to fly. So we found it excellent that we were able to walk to the plane, get to our seats, put our baggage up before anybody else was on board, and we started the trip in a much more positive frame of mind because we didn't have to rush and we weren't affecting anybody else. So that was really helpful. Then when we landed, we were the last ones off the plane, or nearly the last ones off the plane, and that again was really useful because we could take our time, weren't holding anybody up, and it was a really useful thing to organise. We chose a taxi from the rank. If you're using total mobility cards, it pays to find out whether those cards are valid and usable in another place, another town, another city, so that you can again get that 75% off, which we were able to do with Queenstown taxis. So that was a bonus as well. It made the taxi ride from the airport to our hotel much cheaper. Then the other thing that we did was we went to a place called Walter Peak Station for a delicious barbecue lunch. Now, the way you access Walter Peak Station is via a lovely steamboat called the Earnslaw, and the Earnslaw transports you to the property where you have the barbecue lunch. So again, we were looking at a great crush of people queuing up to get on board, and there's limited seating on board the ship, and we knew that I would need to sit down to be safe to travel the 40 minutes across the lake. So again, we went to confirm our booking for that day, and my husband said, "Do you have a thing called priority boarding?" And I said, "Yes, we do. Would you like us to provide that for you?" So we said that we would, and as a result we were able to again get on board the ship before other passengers, so that we could ensure that we got a safe seating for the duration of the trip across the lake. When we got to the station, one thing we had looked into previously was whether you could get a wheelchair from the boat where it docked and the actual restaurant where the barbecue lunch was being held. And we'd been told that it wasn't wheelchair friendly, and I have to advise that they are absolutely correct. The path from the dock to the restaurant is gravel, and it slopes down towards the lakeside, and it's not even, it's a bit rutted, and it would be nigh on impossible to get a wheelchair or even a walker from the boat to the restaurant. So you really do need to be reasonably able. Maximum, I would say, would be to have a stick, and like I did, it's handy to have somebody to help you and support you along the way. So that was very helpful as well. So we got the priority boarding on the boat and on the way there and on the way back, and it just helped us to get settled, feel safe and not feel hassled. On the return trip on Friday, we also used priority boarding again for the plane, and it just made things so much easier, and we felt so much more settled. And I know particularly myself, I didn't feel hassled by having to rush myself to get on or off the plane, so it was really helpful. So those are just some tips. Look into a discounted taxi service, and particularly one that is accustomed to dealing with older people or people with disabilities, and they will hopefully provide you with more support, as Driving with Daisy did for us, so that you can get out and about and know that you're understood and that somebody will help you. The Driving with Daisy person that picked us up from the airport in Christchurch here actually came into the building, into the arrivals area for domestic, and was waiting for us, which your normal taxi driver wouldn't do. So all in all, a really good service, and the discounted taxi fares are certainly really helpful, and any kind of support when travelling is also always very much welcomed. So I encourage you to continue getting out there, going on the plane, having trips to see family and friends, or just experiences with your partner or even by yourself. It certainly makes it a whole lot easier having someone that will allow you to have priority boarding. So get out there, enjoy those trips, and keep on experiencing life to the full. This has been Sue for Parkies and Me, My Journey with Parkinson's. Kia kaha, be brave, be strong, be you.